Welcome to Civil War Digital Digest. I'm Will. In an earlier episode, I introduced you to my friend Matt Woodburn, and we've been welcomed back to his collection today. We saw the tip of the iceberg last time, Matt, and today we're going to look at a piece of your collection that takes us to one battle in the American Civil War. Tell me why, Franklin.
The Battle of Franklin, it was important to me. I lived in Franklin, Tennessee for 20 years, and it was where the Army of Tennessee really ceased to exist as an effective fighting force after they were slaughtered in a charge they made.
Okay, so that's something you've collected around because the connection brought you there both story-wise and residentially speaking.
Yes.
So you've made part of your collection, Franklin. What are we looking at here?
Well, just a number of artifacts that came from the battle that are identified to a particular soldier who has been verified to be at that battle. And the first thing that I've got over here is this black Veliz that's trimmed in yellow that belonged to Federal General David Stanley. And a valise is where you store your personal effects. He might have put a shirt in there, maybe a shaving kit, just a few small things, extra pair of socks. And that was basically his suitcase that he wore on the back of his saddle.
Stanley, is he commanding cavalry during the Battle of Franklin?
No, he's in charge of infantry at that point.
But this is from a point in time in his career.
Earlier in his career when he started off in cavalry.
Let's keep heading to the biggest piece on the table here. And the thing I should mention, these are all federal items. We've got more to come. The long arm.
Well, you call it a long arm. I'd call it a carbine, because that is a Spencer carbine. It's a shorter weapon that you can use on horseback. A rifle that's long, you can't really shoot from horseback. This, you're going to be able to fire from horseback if you need to. Now, even though that's not a great way to do that, the horse is moving, it throws your aim off. I've tried to actually do it. This is short and easy to carry. You're going to wear it slung over your shoulder when you're on the horse. And this is a Spencer carbine, which in my book, if I had to be transported back to the Civil War and I could have any gun, I want the rifle version of this. Most of the guns back then, they're all single shot and you're ramming a ball down with a rammer. This is a lever action. You've got 7 shots in the butt with metallic cartridge and you just start cranking that little lever and chambering your next round to be able to fire it. So it's a lovely repeater.
Great. Okay, this lovely repeater is good for cavalry. Tell me about the Franklin connection.
This particular Spencer was used in Company K of the 6th Illinois. Don't have the specific soldier, but you can identify these from records by their serial numbers. So it shows it being issued.
This was at the Battle of Franklin?
Yes.
Great. Where do you want to go next on the table?
Let's go to the 14th Corps Forage Cap. It's right here. It's got the blue acorn on it. That is a corps badge. The different corps were identified by symbols on the soldier, and the acorn was chosen to be the symbol of the 14th Corps. And then even when you break corps down into divisions, they started making colors. This one you see is blue. That is the 3rd Division.
Great. And who wore this?
This particular cap is not identified to the individual soldier. It was just worn by a soldier in the 14th Corps that was in the 3rd Division. That's all the more identification that is on this.
And 14th Corps 3rd Division fought at Franklin.
Yes, it did.
Fantastic. Now I know from our preparation ahead of time, we'll talk next about a grouping here.
Yes, there are 3 items right here. This slouch hat, the pair of shoulder boards, and this kepi. They were all worn by Captain Samuel Davis. He was in the 77th Pennsylvania. The interesting thing about the 77th Pennsylvania, they were the only Eastern regiment that fought at Franklin. They mostly served out in the Eastern Theater, the Pennsylvania soldiers, but this was the one unit that was there. Just very, very coincidental that I was able to find this piece.
Well, we look to the front corner, we see a set of Federal leathers. Tell me about those.
That is a set of Federal leathers, a cartridge box, belt, and cap box that was worn by William H. Oliver in the 44th Missouri.
Tell me, okay, 44th Missouri at Franklin?
Yes. Fought around the Carter House, which was just about dead center of the entire line if you look how it extends in both directions from there. This was an epicenter. Fighting in the garden at this house was the jaws of hell.
Wow. And you've said there's something interesting about the way this set of leathers was worn.
Yeah, a cartridge box was set up to be worn with a shoulder strap, but this soldier, and sometimes they didn't want to issue them because of cost, but that box was set to also be worn on the belt. And if you take a look at the wear marks on this, you can tell that this was worn for a long time on this belt, looking at the straps on the back of the box and looking at the top edge of the belt.
Wow, fantastic. One piece left when we talk Federals of Franklin. We've got an officer's haversack here.
Yeah, this officer's haversack, it's actually a beautiful piece in that you have embossing on the flap here of flowers and a federal shield. This this haversack also has a beautiful strap buckle that's got this scalloped edge. Just beautiful work. Officers could get something like that. They purchased a lot of their items out of their own pocket. They were not necessarily always issued something. They were given extra pay, and that was to outfit yourself.
It's a great discussion about the piece itself. Tell me the Franklin story and the man behind this piece.
Well, this particular haversack was carried by John Zimmerman, who was in the 3rd Illinois Cavalry. It's got a considerable amount of wear on it, and I don't want to get into opening it up. It's, from all the years of aging, it's gotten very, very fragile.
Well, we've run the table from end to end, and I know the secret to this. Is this the end of the Franklin collection, Matt?
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Well, if we have the Federal side, we need the Confederate side. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a second. The table's going to look a lot different. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back, and this table looks a lot different. Talk to me about the Confederates at Franklin.
The Confederates made a horrible charge where they just got slaughtered, and the Army of Tennessee, it is written, ceased to exist as an effective fighting force.
The men who served in that army carried these pieces.
Yes, they did.
Wow. Well, let's start walking through. Where do you want to start us at?
Let's start down over here with the revolvers.
Okay.
First one closest to you is Captain Thomas Gibson's 51 Colt Navy revolver. He was with the 10th Tennessee Infantry. An interesting fact about him, he was General John Adams' cousin. And General Adams was also fighting in this battle.
Okay.
This is walking into war with your family.
Wow. And the next piece?
The next one that we have, that's model 1860 Colt Army revolver. And that one was carried by W.J. Thomas in the 7th Tennessee Cavalry. Another Confederate carried weapon, even though that is a northern manufactured arm. Very, very common for the Confederates to carry northern weapons. They just didn't have the kind of manufacturing capacity in the South.
Absolutely, and we've done some photography in other places and in other collections. We're going to be able to show that coming up pretty soon. Okay. We've got 2 revolvers. What's our third?
The last revolver that I've got here on this table right now is one that's very, very special to me. This is General Thomas B. Smith's 49 Colt revolver. He was one of the Confederate generals that was at the Battle of Franklin.
And how did he fare through the battle?
He survived it.
Okay, which for being a Confederate general at the Battle of Franklin, that's pretty good luck because they didn't do so well there. Okay, well, we have 1 general here and 2 officers. Where do we go next?
Well, the next thing that I'd like to discuss with you, to show you, is this Kepi sitting in the middle of the table. This is Francis Marion Cockrell's Kepi. He was said to have one of the hardest fighting Confederate units in the entire Confederate Army. He was from Missouri. This guy and his men, they were devils. If you got to fight them, pray for your soul and then get ready to meet God.
Wow.
And they fight that hard.
And Mr. Cockrell, what rank did he carry?
He was a general.
So this is a second piece identified to a general at Franklin.
Yeah.
You've got a couple of pieces of paper circling it. What are we looking at, and do they go with the Kepi?
They do go with the Kepi. The first one is a receipt. It was the receipt for having this cap manufactured in Mobile, Alabama. And it tells about the cost that he paid for it, and it was a wonderful artifact to receive with the cap. And this other framed piece right here is Cockrell's signature. After the war, and he had sworn allegiance to the United States again, he became a United States Senator.
Wow. Fantastic. So that's just an amazing group. I mean, I've never seen a bill of sale for an individual piece before, let alone one where I can look at the piece at the same time.
They are rare, and especially rare if they're Confederate.
Very good. And where do we go next?
Well, next place I'd like to jump to is a Confederate, what they would have called Butternut Kepi over here. It's tan wool. It was worn by an Alabama soldier, A.D. Kelly of the 26th Alabama Infantry. He was at the Battle of Franklin as well, fighting with his unit.
And so we're into enlisted men. What's next?
Well, if we're doing all of the enlisted men pieces, let's move over here to this side. This is a brown Confederate Kepi. Actually, this is a forage cap style, is how the cut and construction of that cap is. And that particular cap was worn by a Georgia soldier, Andrew Rothell, and he was with the 24th Georgia Company C.
Well, where do we go next?
Well, the next thing that I'd like to show you is this blanket right here. This is one that was carried by Isaac Rutledge. He served in Company E of, this is a combined unit. It's the 5th Kentucky Infantry / 23rd Tennessee Battalion. As units fought and they got reduced in size to death and disease, finally, there were so few men, they didn't have an effective fighting force. So they get another one and say, okay, you two are now going to join and be one fighting unit. And this is an example of that. And again, it was the 5th Kentucky Infantry and 23rd Tennessee Battalion.
Wow. Fantastic.
It gets very confusing trying to research these. You know, are you Kentucky? Are you Tennessee? What's your unit number?
But at Franklin, they were together, and this is that unit that was at Franklin.
Exactly.
Great. 2 pieces left. Which one do you want to handle next?
Well, the next one that I'd like to go to is this. This is one of the gems in my collection. This is one of the generals that was killed at the Battle of Franklin.
Who is this?
This is General Otho French Straull's Haversack that was shot and killed at Franklin. And it's an interesting looking piece. It's not a particular design that would fall into a common pattern. It's one that was privately made.
Wow.
Just all the details say that.
That's beautiful. And General Straull did not make it out of the Battle of Franklin.
No, he didn't. He was one of the generals that was killed there and then laid out at the Carnton Plantation when they laid the dead generals out at that particular house at the Battle of Franklin.
Wow.
The last piece, it's this model 1816 Alabama conversion musket. It's a conversion because this thing started life as a flintlock, an old style of percussion where you would have a piece of flint that would strike a metal pan and throw sparks down in there and ignite the charge that would propel the projectile out of the gun. This one is sort of a cross in between the flint and percussion. This one is a conversion where they drilled a hole in the side and screwed this bolster in and put a nipple in it to have an easier to use and faster percussion ignition system. It's something that the Confederates did to take the old flintlocks that were in their armories and arsenals and make them a little more modern and faster to use. You're not having to prime a pan and take care of keeping all of that clean. It's just one of those transitional pieces that they had at that time.
Well, fantastic. And I'll just go ahead and add a note here that our friends Mark and Jason Krause joined us about a year ago, and we did an entire separate episode about the 1816 Springfield musket and all its conversions. We'll put a link up here where you can go ahead and see that. Back to Franklin. It's a hunk of metal. It's a weapon. Fine. Tell me who the man is.
the man who carried this particular weapon was, I just have an initial, M. Blackwell from Company I in the 45th Alabama. And I've not found anything further in my research online to identify more of his name.
Matt, thank you so much for sharing this in these tangible little ways to bring not only some of the horrific moments of the Battle of Franklin, from the generals being laid out to the charge that destroyed the Army of Tennessee to the fighting around the cotton mill. This is another way to get closer and experience a history through the objects of the men who were there. And what a collection. Federal, Confederate, 3 generals, 1 U.S. senator, one of your pet passions, a blanket, some great revolvers, and a Spencer carbine. Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
You're very welcome.
Well, thank you for spending time with us at Civil War Digital Digest. This one's gone on for a bit, but I hope it's been a really rich episode for you to watch. I want to say thank you both to Matt, and then thank you also to the patrons, the CWDD coffee grinders. The trip here to visit Matt has been underwritten by their support. We'd love to have you take a look and possibly join us there. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.